Susan felt vivid again, yes, vivid. For the first time in a long while, she felt like her old self, sharp, in control, alive. It was as if her wheelchair had given her a fresh shot of life rather than taken it away. The hardest part wasn't her physical limitations. It was the thought of who would be the right daughter-in-law, the right wife for her beloved son. She wanted the person for her son, someone she could call a daughter. The daughter she never had. So she made a decision. Until she figured that out, everything else would pause. No more briefings. No more meetings. Business travel suspended. Yoga classes and dog walks abandoned. She was taking a break from her carefully scheduled life for a new kind of mission. When Susan confided her plan to her old friend and doctor, Nathan, he chuckled in disbelief. "What's your idea, then?" Susan teased. "Have you got a better one? Does your son even know about this little project of yours?" Nathan asked, still laughing. Her plan was simple, at least on the surface. She had secretly registered with Elderly Minds, a discreet private care agency, pretending to be a frail, disabled old lady in need of constant support. Her real intention: to audition carers as potential daughters-in-law. Carers came and went through the wrought iron gates of her grand London home. Each day, Susan played the part of the helpless client. Each evening, she studied the hidden CCTV footage. Some failed immediately. One carer posed for selfies in Susan's kitchen and bedroom, later posting them online to flaunt a life of fabricated affluence. Another was caught stealing, a confrontation Susan nearly escalated before remembering it might blow her cover. Weeks slipped by, and still the right one had not appeared. Then, one morning, Susan called Elderly Minds with a specific request. She wanted the carer who had once covered just a week's shift for a sick colleague. That brief encounter had left Susan intrigued. But the agency protested. This carer was fully booked, assigned long-term to a wealthy Knightsbridge family. Susan's voice turned cold. "I don't care. I need her reassigned immediately." There was a pause on the line, then a calm reply. "Don't worry, Susan. I'm sure we can sort something out." The very next morning, Mirabel arrived at the mission. What began as duty would soon blossom into a bond, and eventually, into the marriage that changed everything. The very next morning, Mirabel arrived at the mission. She came quietly through the grand iron gates, dressed neatly in her uniform, her ID badge clipped to her chest. There was no flashiness, no arrogance, no false charm, just a calm, professional presence. From the moment she introduced herself, Mirabel seemed different. She spoke with warmth but carried herself with discipline. She listened carefully, asked the right questions, and treated Susan not like a fragile burden, but like a person worthy of respect. Later that evening, Susan wheeled herself into the surveillance room and replayed the hidden CCTV footage. She leaned forward, scrutinizing Mirabel's every move. Unlike the others, there was no carelessness, no vanity, no sign of self-interest. Mirabel tidied without being asked, brought tea without hesitation, and never once took out her phone except to check the time. Her gestures were natural, her attention undivided. For the first time in weeks, Susan smiled at the screen. This one is different. Days turned into weeks, and Susan grew fond of Mirabel. Their conversations stretched beyond routine care. Mirabel spoke with quiet passion about her work, about how she believed caring for the elderly wasn't just a job but a calling. Susan, though careful not to reveal her ruse, found herself enjoying Mirabel's company more than she had expected. One afternoon, Susan's son Reilly returned home unexpectedly and met Mirabel in the hallway. He was polite but distracted, barely glancing at the carer as he passed. Mirabel, in turn, greeted him warmly, but without fluster, carrying on with her duties. Susan observed silently, suppressing a knowing smile. The day finally came when Susan could no longer contain her secret. It happened one morning after Mirabel had finished helping her through the routine. Instead of reaching for the wheelchair, Susan stood. Slowly, steadily, and without hesitation, she rose to her feet. Mirabel froze. Her eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening but no words coming out. For a long moment, the silence hung between them. She paused, looking startled. "I don't understand," Mirabel whispered. Susan's lips curved into a mischievous smile. "I think it's time I introduced myself properly." Over tea at the dining table, Susan explained her elaborate plan, why she had pretended to be disabled, why she had sifted through carer after carer. At first, Mirabel was stunned, even offended. But as Susan spoke, her sincerity shone through. She wasn't playing games for cruelty, she had been searching, hoping to find someone genuine enough to be part of her family. That evening, Susan called Reilly into the room. "Son," she said with a proud gleam, "there's someone I think you should get to know." At first, Reilly was hesitant. Mirabel was simply the carer who had worked for his mother. But with Susan's gentle nudging, and Mirabel's own quiet grace, the walls began to fall. A dinner was arranged, then a second. Reilly discovered Mirabel's humor, her determination, her resilience. Mirabel discovered Reilly's kindness, his sharp wit, his gentle loyalty beneath the reserved exterior. What began as small conversations turned into long evenings. What began as courtesy turned into laughter. And what began as duty, Mirabel's commitment to her client, soon blossomed into something deeper, a bond, a friendship, a love that would grow into the marriage that changed everything. The cold calls came, the phone clicked dead, and Susan sat staring at the receiver. The agency's tone had been too quick, too agreeable. "We'll sort something out for you, Susan." Her lips tightened. Agencies didn't sort things out so easily, not when carers were fully booked. For a moment, suspicion flickered across her face. Then she forced herself to relax. It didn't matter, Mirabel was here now. And Mirabel was different. But across the hallway, Reilly leaned on the banister, watching Mirabel help Susan with her tea. Something about the smoothness of it all, the timing, the reassignment, the perfect professionalism, made him frown. "Too neat," he muttered under his breath. Later that night, Reilly sat in his study, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. He tapped a number. "Jack, it's me. I need you to look into someone. Name's Mirabel, works for Elderly Minds Agency." "Quietly, please." The private investigator grunted. "What are we looking for?" "Everything. Background, work history, social ties. And check the agency while you're at it. Something stinks." When the call ended, Reilly leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He hated the thought. Distrusting a woman who had done nothing but treat his mother with kindness. But instincts were instincts. A week later, Jack dropped a file on Reilly's desk. "Her records, spotless," Jack said, almost incredulous. "No debts, no family drama. Employment history clean as crystal." "Too clean." Reilly frowned. "Scrubbed." "Feels like it." "And the agency. Holes everywhere. Complaints that disappeared. Staff who left with no explanation. I even found 3 carers listed as active, but no one's seen them in months." Reilly flipped the pages, his gut tightening. "So she's not the problem." Jack smirked grimly. "No. The problem is, who sent her?" Then the cracks appeared, although there had been doubts. One evening, Susan wheeled toward her study, but froze in the doorway. Mirabel was on the phone, her voice low, urgent. "No, I told you already, I can't ask her that." She paused, looking down the hallway, to make sure no one was listening. Then she added, "She trusts me. Please don't." Mirabel turned sharply, startled to see Susan. The call ended abruptly. "Who was that?" Susan asked, her voice calm but edged. Mirabel's face flushed. "Just a friend." Susan said nothing. But later that night, she stared at the CCTV feed of Mirabel pacing in her room, whispering into her phone. Doubt coiled in her chest. Then came the confrontation. Reilly cornered Mirabel the next morning in the hallway. Stone-faced, hardly smiling. "Who's pressuring you?" he asked quietly. Mirabel blinked, defensive. "Oh, no one," she smiled, trying to deflect the question. "You were reassigned here out of nowhere. The agency's too eager. And you're taking calls at midnight like someone owns you." His voice hardened. "Tell me the truth, or I'll find it without you." Her composure cracked. She turned away, her shoulders trembling. "They said if I didn't take the reassignment, I'd lose my job," she whispered. "I didn't want this. I didn't want to trick you, or Susan, your mother. But I couldn't afford to walk away." Reilly's expression softened, but his suspicion remained. "Who?" Mirabel. Who's pulling the strings? Is she part of the larger game? Together, Susan and Reilly began pulling threads. The deeper they looked, the darker it became. Elderly Minds wasn't just matching carers to clients, it was exploiting wealthy families. Planting carers where they could access wills, overhear secrets, gain leverage. Mirabel sat at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. I thought I was just working. I didn't realize they'd been using me. Susan reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You're not the enemy here. They are. But as she said it, a chill ran down her spine. If the agency had manipulated Mirabel into her house, what else were they capable of? This was an uneasy resolution. They exposed enough to cut ties with Elderly Minds, but the victory felt fragile. Susan and Reilly both trusted Mirabel now. But the shadow of the agency lingered. One evening, Susan returned to her study. On her desk lay an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single CCTV, still, her, standing tall, no wheelchair in sight. Her heart stopped. Someone else knew her secret, and they were watching her, just like she was watching them. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop a comment below to let us know where you are watching from.